We will now talk about childcare facilities, which is in the division 3.10. Childcare facilities shall be clean and safe, especially fire safety and first aid. And childcare facilities should be supervised at all times by a responsible adult to avoid exposure to any workplace activities or processes which may present risk to their health and safety. And this is slide number 42. And what we are saying over here is that any factory which is employing males as well as females, men as well as women who have children, they should have the facility from the factory to bring their children, and while the moms are working, the children can be handled, taken care of by a trained nurse in the creche. And creche is a separate space allocated by the factory, meant only for the children, and taken care of by trained nurse. So therefore, if a factory is employing a married woman with children, then it should also provide creche for the children, which should be clean and safe, and especially in terms of fire safety and first aid. There should be first aid, and no such thing should be there which can lead to fire. And childcare facilities should be supervised at all times, because children are unruly. Children can, they do not know, they can tinker with anything, and that can lead to accidents or fire. So therefore, children cannot be left unsupervised, and therefore childcare facilities should be supervised at all times by a responsible adult to avoid exposure to any workplace activities or processes which may present a risk to their health and safety. So there could be various activities happening in the workplace which could be dangerous for the children. So children should not in any way expose themselves to any of these activities, and therefore there should be a supervisor at all times. And if we see slide number 43, this is an ideal creche where the space is created by the factory, and we have toys here, and then everything is soft and something which is conducive for very small children, infants, and there are these nurses who are supervising the children. And then we come to slide number 44, which talks about environmental protection standards. Now, because every factory, whatever they produce, there are some byproducts. So how do they dispose the byproduct or the waste? So what is expected of them is that they must identify the waste sources, what are the wastes, and they should develop correct procedure for disposal. How are you going to dispose it? Either you give it out to the truck which comes to collect all the garbage. If the waste is hazardous, then this hazardous waste, they should be labeled and they should be stored securely and safely, because it cannot be mixed with the rest of the garbage, and it should be stored securely and safely in and disposed of properly. It cannot. So there are various there are safe ways of disposing hazardous waste. That is, those methods have to be undertaken by the factory, and training is provided for handling hazardous waste annually. So different kind of hazardous waste, different methods, and training for the same must be provided to the concerned persons. The training should be provided annually. So that was waste disposal. Now if we talk about air emissions, there are many factories which produce a lot of air pollution. So when you talk about air emissions, the factory must identify the air emission sources, which are the departments or which are the machines or equipments which emit air pollution or air particles. So the factory must identify air emission sources and should check, get the air quality checked with the lab to check whether the emission is within the limits or not, within the legal limits or not. And if there are air emissions, then the factory should try to have an in-house air treatment facility, so that no bad air or harmful gases come out of the factory. Then we come to slide number 45 and talks about industrial waste water discharge. Just like if you are washing the garments or dry cleaning it, then there's going to be a lot of water mixed with detergent which you are going to let it out through the drainage system. So in these cases, the factory must identify the wastewater discharge sources. In this case, in case of apparel, the washing department is the main source of water discharge, and again in this case it is important to monitor if the emission is within limits. So in this case you have to check the quality of the water and see the amount of chemicals which are there in the water, whether those different chemicals are within the permissible limit or not. And it is preferable that the factory has in-house wastewater treatment facility, which is called ETP, which is effluent treatment plant. Effluent treatment plant, what it does is that it neutralizes all the water which has detergent and everything mixed in it. So the effluent treatment plant, it neutralizes the water and then only it disposes it off through the drainage system. Next we have asbestos. Asbestos, contrary to its status in India, asbestos is supposed to be very, very dangerous anywhere in the world, and therefore there is a special provision for it. Asbestos, if it is present in the factory, its condition should be monitored. Asbestos has a particular characteristic that its condition changes over a period of time and it becomes more unsafe with the advent of time. So if asbestos is present, its condition should be monitored and it should be maintained safely. Anyone working within this environment, example electricians, they should be made aware of the presence of asbestos, and therefore they are supposed to be careful and they should not be spending more than a given amount of time in that space where asbestos is present. We come to slide number 46 and this talks about storage. Now when we talk about storage, we are talking about primarily the chemicals. Now wherever chemicals are stored, the rule is that the largest drum or the container, whatever is its volume, there should be at least one container, secondary containment as in it can be a tank or anything or another drum. There should be at least one such containment which is equal to 110% of the largest container, and that should be present over there in the storage area. So just in case there is a chemical leakage, the biggest of the drum, which if it starts leaking, one can at least remove the chemical from the drum into this secondary containment, which is 110% of the largest drum. So which means that even if there is chemical leakage, you have at least one container in which you can empty the entire content of this leaking drum. And like I said earlier, there are no drainage system which is allowed inside the storage area where chemicals are there. And drum storage areas, they shall always be covered to prevent rainwater from coming in contact with the drums. If rainwater, when they come in contact with the drums, it can always cause havoc. It can react. Rainwater reacting with the drum can lead to leakage, corrosion of the drum metal, because of which the drainage can, because of which the leakage can happen. So chemicals, drums full of chemical, they should always be covered so that rainwater does not come in contact with the drums. So with that we come to the end of the section which talks about health and safety standards, which is the third section, and now we come to the fourth section which talks about child labor. Now let's understand what is a child. Now, there are different definitions worldwide. As per UNICEF, child is anyone in the age group of 0 to 18 years is a child. Now in India, legally speaking, below 15 years of age is called child, 15 to 18 years is young workers, above 18 is adult. Now anyone below the age of 15 years is a child and is not supposed to be engaged in any kind of activity in a factory. Persons in the in the age group of 15 to 18 years, which are young workers, they may be given jobs in a factory, but they should not be given risky jobs. No pressing, heavy lifting, dangerous chemicals and operations. These things have not to be given to the young workers. And these young workers have to be, as per the law, they have to be given a 20-minute break for every 4 hours of work. Meaning to say that if they're starting at 8 o'clock, so 12 o'clock they are going to have at least a 20-minute rest time. And young workers, they cannot be made to work beyond 10 p.m. Any overtime that is happening after 5 o'clock, so from 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, the break time, so from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock they can work, but then not beyond that. And the factory must provide educational facilities if at all it is employing young workers. So with that we come to the fifth section, which is about wages and benefits, and we are on slide number 48. Now this talks about workers, they should be paid as per the existing local minimum wages. This has to be remembered by all factories at any given point of time, that all workers have to be paid at least the local minimum wages, not less than that. That will be a crime. And they should be paid at least monthly, not bi-monthly. They should be paid at least monthly. Mostly in India, if you talk about a garment factory, then the labor is paid every week. The daily wages or the piece rate workers, they have to be paid every week, because that's how they are able to exist. Otherwise they'll not be able to, they don't have so much of surplus that they can wait for 1 month for the salary. And as per the rule, no deduction to be made as a disciplinary measure. Meaning to say, in case someone makes a mistake or comes late or does something which falls under indiscipline, factory is not authorized or is not allowed to make any cash deduction. Not allowed at all. If they are doing it, it is illegal. And the employer or the factory should inform clearly regarding the working hours, work days, rest days, notice period, entitlement to leave, other benefits. So what are the working hours? 8 hours from 9 to 5 or 9:15 or 9:30 to 5:30, whatever. It has to be clearly informed. Work days, Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday if it is 6 days. Sunday will be holiday. Some factories may work on Sundays and they may give a holiday on, let's say, a Friday and Saturday, something like that. So all of that has to be clearly informed. The rest days, how many holidays would be given, how many casual leave, how many earned leave and things like that. And the notice period. Anyone wants to leave the organization, they have to give a notice period of 15 days or 30 days. They should be clearly mentioned on the notice board, and it should also be informed to the worker who is joining the organization. And then the entitlement to leave and other benefits. So entitlement to leave is how many leaves does a person get. So it is like 8 casual leave, there is a 30 earned leave, and then there are medical leaves and things like that. So whatever leaves are there, that has to be clearly told to the worker, and whatever other benefits like bonus and medical benefits and travel allowance and things like that. So all of that should be clearly informed to the workers. And the owner or the employer, they shall provide to the employee in written form about the piece rate or pay rate will be paid on a daily basis, or will be paid on a piece rate. How many pieces have you made? Accordingly, you will be paid. So whatever, whichever way you will be paid, this condition has to be clearly informed by the employer to the worker. And what will be the gross pay, the net pay, and the overtime pay? The gross pay is the total money that you get. Net pay is all the tax deduction and other things which are done by the company itself. TDS, tax deducted as source. So whatever money is deducted by the company for the provident fund and in terms of taxes, once the deduction has been done, then whatever is left is called the net pay. So the employer should tell the worker that what is your total salary and how much salary will you get in your hand, and what will be deducted and under what heading, and then what will be the overtime pay. If people work for more than 8 hours, then at what rate will they be paid, and the itemized deduction. Whatever deductions are done, the employer should inform the worker that a certain amount of money has been deducted as tax, some has been deducted as provident fund and things like that. So all of that has to be clearly mentioned. So now we come to slide number 49. Very important again, and this is section 6, and it talks about working hours. Now, work schedule should be communicated to the employees. Now, sometimes a factory may work, let's say 6 in the morning till 2 o'clock in the daytime, and then holiday. Some people would work start late, let's say 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and then it will work till about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. Something that is followed in Mumbai, because the sun rises late and sets late. So whatever is the work schedule should be communicated to the employees. That is one. Can be communicated to them in written form, and it should also be displayed in the notice board clearly in the vernacular language. And the employee's working time should be recorded accurately. Anyone is coming at 9 o'clock, then it should be recorded as 9 o'clock. It should not happen that someone has come at 9 and the recording has been done as 9:15. And the factory says that you have come 15 minutes late. That should not happen. Whatever time a person is coming or whatever time a person is going, that should be recorded accurately. And normal working hours should not be more than 48 hours per week. So in India, a person should not be working more than 48 hours, which means if a person is working 6 days a week, then the person will be working 8 hours every day for 6 days, which will be 48 hours per week. So in India, a factory cannot ask a labor to work more than 48 hours per week as normal working hours. If at all the worker is working more than 48 hours, then that extra hours will be counted as overtime. Now, regarding the overtime, it's a rule that the worker will decide if they want to do overtime or not. If they don't want to do overtime, then the factory cannot force the worker to do overtime. So overtime has to be voluntary, and it should not be more than 12 hours per week. So in 1 hour, you cannot ask a person to do overtime more than 12 hours. And at the same time, any worker cannot be asked to work more than 50 hours of overtime in 3 months. So in 1 week, it should not be more than 12 hours, and in 3 months, it should not be more than 50 hours. And one thing about overtime is that whatever number of hours labor works, that overtime will have to be paid at 2 times the normal wage, which means if a worker is being paid 20 rupees per hour, then during the overtime, the worker will have to be paid 40 rupees per hour. This is the labor law in India, and every employee is entitled to paid holiday. Now, paid holiday is something like you work for 6 days, so 7th day, which is let's say Sunday, that Sunday is a paid holiday, meaning to say that you don't go to the office or to the factory, but you are paid for that day. So every employee is entitled to a paid holiday. and then there are festivals, and then there are earned leave or there are casual leave. So whatever earned leave or casual leave will be taken by the labor or the employee, they'll take the leave and there'll be no deduction. So it's going to be a paid holiday. So with that, we come to slide number 50, and this is section 7, which talks about discrimination. No discrimination is practiced, and this is strictly to be followed. Any proof found by the Labor Department will amount to prosecution, and you may be dragged to the court, and the case will be taken up, and the court may penalize the factory, may blacklist it, and things like that. So no discrimination must be practiced on the basis of race, color, language, nationality, ethnic or social origin, religious beliefs, political opinion, gender, marital status, disability, property, birth, age, or sexual orientation. So no such discrimination should be there. And again, this discrimination is part of the Constitution of India, which clearly says that there can be no discrimination on the basis of religious belief and gender, marital status, etc. Then we come to slide number 51, which talks about the 8th section, which is regular employment. Regular employment is provided. Now, this is something which may look a little odd, but regular employment is provided. It means that people will work on a regular basis. The factory is not going to hire people on one fine day, and on any given subsequent day they will be kicked out. So the law says that people, when they're employed, they should be employed on a regular basis, and therefore all workers, they have the right to enjoy security and stability of employment and regularity of income. It cannot be that today you come and the next day you are kicked out, and then the third day again you are called. It cannot happen like that. So and every factory has to observe this, that each employee should get labor contracts or letter of employment. So when you take up a job in any company, you should always ask for the appointment letter, which is the legal document which says that the company has offered you a job. And the employer should clearly tell the employee about the working hours, work days, rest days, notice period, leave and benefits, etc., which we discussed earlier, and no employee to pay fees for employment to the employer. If someone is giving you a job, that does not mean they are going to ask you for a fee. No one is allowed to take money to provide you employment. And now we come to slide number 52, which talks further about the regular employment. Following things are not acceptable. At will termination. Any factory, whenever they want, they are going to kick you out. Not allowed. A termination without notice. This is when a company says that we don't need your services anymore, and from tomorrow onwards don't come. If at all a company has a valid reason and they ask you to leave, they'll still have to give you a notice of 15 days or 30 days. Whatever is the notice period, 15 or 30 days, that should be mentioned in your appointment letter. And then false apprenticeship. Now, apprenticeship is just like internship. A false apprenticeship means that a company may ask you to work in the organization, stating that we are giving you the opportunity, we are going to train you, and you will get training from us, but you will not be paid. So false apprenticeship is about a factory exploiting the labor in the name of apprenticeship. So they tell you that we'll train you, but they don't train you, they actually make you work and they don't pay you anything. So that is false apprenticeship, and this is not acceptable, and this is illegal. And supplier shall ensure that all subcontractors should be in compliance with the national and local laws. There are a lot of times when a factory they take a lot of labor on contract from the labor contractor, subcontractor. Now, when a factory does this, they are hiring the labor through a subcontractor, and whatever is the salary is paid by the factory straight away to the subcontractor, and the subcontractor pays to the labor. Now, it is the responsibility of the factory to ensure that they are taking labor only from such subcontractors who are following the national and local laws. If they are not following the laws, then you should not take labor from such kind of subcontractors. Any factory is not allowed to give the excuse that we are paying the salary to the subcontractor. After that, we do not know whether the subcontractor is paying the salary to the labor or not. I have done my deed. I have taken care of my responsibility. I have nothing to do with what is the subcontractor doing. This statement is not allowed in the eyes of the law. Supplier has to investigate and check whether the subcontractor is following the law or not, and whether is ethical or not. In case they are not following the law and they are unethical, then you should immediately stop taking labor from such subcontractors. And then we come to the last division of COC, which is the 9th one, which talks about the treatment of employees and employee communication. Now, how should you treat your employees? There should not be any corporal punishment, any physical punishment, any mental or verbal abuse. There shouldn't be any sexual harassment, intimidation, threatening people. There shouldn't be any harsh or inhumane treatment. And the employer or the owner, they should protect their employees from bullying, harassment, etc. within the company. So you have to keep an open eye to see whether everyone is happy or not, whether someone is being harassed by their co-workers and things like that. If this thing is happening, it is your fault. And if anything happens untoward, it will legally be the responsibility of the company, and the company will have to pay the compensation for any losses or any such thing that happens with any employee. And of course, there should be workplace grievance and disciplinary actions. So which means that anyone has any problem, they should know where to complain. And second is that if someone has complained, it has to be recorded. Once it has been recorded, then disciplinary action should be taken against the person against whom the complaint has been lodged. Of course, after due diligence, after due investigations. And once the action has been taken or whatever measures have been taken, all of that has to be recorded in the register which is related to the grievance and disciplinary actions. So that brings us to the end of COC, and that's slide number 53. And now we will be discussing about I.S.O. I.S.O. The full form is International Standards Organization, and currently the I.S.O. version that is being followed is I.S.O. 9001-2015, which is a revision. It has replaced the previous document, which was I.S.O. 9001-2008. Today we are following I.S.O. 9001-2015, and we have now reached slide number 55. Now, what is ISO 9001? ISO 9001 is a standard that sets out the requirements for a quality management system. It helps businesses and organizations to be more efficient and improve the customer satisfaction. ISO 9001-2008 has been replaced by ISO 9001-2015, which is more applicable and accessible to all types of enterprises. ISO, the spirit of ISO can be simply summarized in 2 lines. And those 2 lines ISO says that do what you say and say what you do. Now what we are saying over here is that whatever you do, whichever way you do, it should be documented. That any function which is happening in any department, whichever way it is to be done, it should be written down. And whatever is written down, it has to be followed accordingly. So whatever you do, write it down. And whatever you have written, do things accordingly. That is, in simple terms, what ISO stands for. Now, what is quality management system? Quality management system is a way of defining how an organization can meet the requirements of its customers and other stakeholders. Now, ISO 9001 is based on the idea of continual improvement, meaning to say that with an understanding that wherever we are right now, we can improve on that. And that improvement can go on a regular basis. So ISO 9000 is about that. ISO 9001 is not about perfection. It is about continuously making improvement to the process, to the system, to the methods, and continuously improving the efficiency. And by way of continual improvement, ISO helps an organization to satisfy the customers, delight the customers, and also keep the other stakeholders happy. Other stakeholders like the government, the NGO, the media, the local communities, the people working within the organization, and other shareholders and other people who are invested in this company. Now, ISO requires the organizations to define the objectives relating to quality or meeting customer needs. So ISO actually forces the organization to define the objectives relating to quality or meeting customer needs. Now, different companies are making different types of products or services. So ISO does not give a definition of the objectives. It forces the organization to write their own definition, define their objectives in their own words related to quality and related to meeting customer needs. How do you meet the customer needs? And continually improve their processes in order to reach them, reach the objectives. So ISO is very, very open. It just says that you have to write down your objective, define the objective. Now you know what kind of a product, what is the type of quality, and how you're going to meet the customer needs. So you write your own definition. You write your own definition of the objective and then follow it. That becomes the mantra for everyone in the organization. We are now on slide number 57, and this talks about who is ISO 9001 for. It is not just for the big organization. It is meant for all kinds of organizations who are producing products, tangible products, or who are producing services or experiences, making movies or making advertisements or whatever. Now, ISO 9001 is suitable for organizations of all types, sizes, and sectors. ISO assists even the small companies that do not have the staff dedicated to quality. Now, normally ISO is so big, so huge, that any big organization has a team of people who only look into the aspects related to ISO and ensure that whatever has been recorded in the ISO register, that is followed properly. But in case of small companies, they don't have such a big workforce, and they don't have so much of money to have a separate person who will only look into ISO. So ISO is such that it also assists the small companies which don't have separate staff dedicated to quality. And now we come to slide number 58, and this talks about benefits of I.S.O. I.S.O. helps assess the overall context of the firm to define the stakeholders and their expectations. Now, the structure of the I.S.O. is such that it forces you to write your objectives. Now, when you write your objective, you will have to consciously understand who are the stakeholders, which is your shareholders, your customers, your employees, the NGOs, the government, the media, everyone. So who are your stakeholders and what are their expectations? What do they expect from you? So I.S.O. helps you to understand that. And once you understand what people expect from you, your customer as well as your shareholders and your own employees and others, with that understanding, you will be able to clearly state your firm's objective and identify new business opportunities. And I.S.O. also helps put the customers first. At the end of the day, you have to keep the customer at the top position. If you are able to meet their needs consistently and enhance their satisfaction, this will lead to repeat customers who keep on coming back to you and buy more and more. It will also lead to new clients and ultimately it will lead to increased business. Now that is the beauty of I.S.O. because it all the time keeps on reminding you that customer is of paramount importance. Customer occupies the most important position and they have to be satisfied at all times. Now we come to slide number 59. If further on benefits of I.S.O. I.S.O. helps in efficient working. Now all the processes are aligned and understood by everyone in the firm. That is what I.S.O. clearly mandates, that you have to write down the processes, and once you've written down the processes, it has to be told to all the persons in the organization. Now, everyone in the organization understands how the company is going to work, what are the processes which will be followed. Now, once everyone knows this, this will ultimately lead to increase in the productivity and efficiency. And ultimately is going to help in bringing down the internal costs. Internal costs are your expenses. Once the expenses are down, you will have more margins and therefore you will have better surplus, better profits. Benefit of I.S.O. One of the benefit also is that it helps the organization to meet the necessary statutory and regulatory requirements. I.S.O. the structure is such that it will help the organizations to fulfill all the legal requirements. And if a company is able to fulfill all the legal requirements, it will never have the problem, face the problem of any government department coming and harassing the company or prosecuting the company, penalizing the company. That's one of the great benefits of I.S.O. And one of the most desirable benefit of I.S.O. is it helps in expanding into new markets. Because in some of the sectors, in some of the countries and some of the clients, they simply say that we are only going to work with a company which is ISO 9001 certified. So if you have ISO certification, it will help you to expand into new markets very easily. You're introducing yourself, you're introducing your organization, and you simply say we are ISO certified. That in itself is going to help in convincing the customers or the clients, and they are going to straight away believe that you must be doing things correctly, and that is why you have got the ISO certification. And another benefit of ISO is that it helps in identifying and address the risk associated with the firm. Now, how does this happen is that because ISO forces you to first identify who are your stakeholders, who are the people or who are the bodies who will be affected by your actions. So when you know who all are related to your actions, you will figure out ways and means of doing things in such a way that none of your stakeholders are adversely affected. So whether it is the local community or the NGOs or the media or the government or the shareholders or your customers or your own employees, if you are keeping all of them happy, then you have addressed all the risks. You have identified them, you have addressed the risks, and you do nothing which is going to harm your organization. And that is one of the biggest benefit of I.S.O. So with that, we come to the end of this session. Thank you.